Happy Friday and welcome to another edition of Meet the Execs, exclusively here on BlackStream Live on Twitch. I'm your host, Brandon Pankey. Super excited to be here. You know, I've got my Lenovo powered by Intel Evo, Windows and Intel Evo working together, creating devices that are made to inspire. And we're super excited about our guest today. It's been an incredible run thus far, and we're going to keep it going. Our guest today from Philadelphia, like myself, just an incredible individual, someone that has spurred and had done so much in music, in entertainment, in technology. He is truly an executive that is someone that is worth listening to. So without further ado, I would like to introduce music and entertainment and tech executive Marc Byers. Marc, how are you today, sir?
Hey, good morning, Brandon. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Thanks for being here with us.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
Absolutely. So what I do with all of our guests when they first start off, just really walk us through your journey. How did you get to where you're at? Where did you start off? Take your time, because what we've learned is that people want to hear the stories, want to hear the journey into how you became such a powerful executive in multiple industries at this point.
Yeah, it's funny, man. It's like it started as a Philadelphia journey, of course. And, it led from me, I had a relationship with Joe Levert. I had a relationship with Kenny Gamble. And Joe was like, look, man, I think you should be in the business, man, because I feel like you can actually help some of these artists collect their money. And ironically, it kind of started with that. But then looking back in hindsight, my uncle, the late Frank Byers, was a musician that played with Gamble and Huff and McFadden and Whitehead and stuff like that. So there was some synergies that came in line that I learned later was kind of lining me up. But, so it started off, man, represented this group, Brother, which, this kid Butter that did You Remind Me for Usher, he was a part of that group.
Okay.
Represented, started riding Jerkins at 15, helped the Roots get their initial deal with some travels that I've been doing with a mutual attorney that we had, Brad Rubens. And, and then it led from there to, working with quite a few producers. And then I ended up kind of realizing that there was more to it. And from there, I just kind of looked at the landscape. I ended up getting a job at Atlantic Records, ironically. And, when I got to Atlantic, the thing that I realized that I wasn't getting any visits from Philly. Philly didn't kind of recognize the music business as a whole because it was very early for us. Then there was a gap in between when the Goodman brothers did their business and we were all actually getting started with our stuff with Rich Nichols, which when I was at Sigma, he was downstairs, I was upstairs, we kind of had this synergy. So once that happened, I realized that I may need to leave and go back to Philly and just apply what I learned. And from there, got Philly's Most Wanted, their deal, started, develop Eve and, got us signed the Aftermath first. And when that didn't kind of work out, for various different reasons, end up having a conversation with Dre to actually release her. He wanted me to speak to Jimmy Iovine. That led to me having a conversation with Jimmy, and Jimmy's like, Mark, we'll just put her on your situation. You split it with Dre. And I was like, I don't have a situation. Plus, I need the manpower around me to make it work. I didn't have other rappers around me at that time. So one thing led to another. And we had already been doing some work with Rough Riders, ironically. Okay. And so, I was like, look, why don't we put on Rough Riders? You guys have a deal there. He's like, we just did the deal with those guys. I can't tell them what to do. This, that, and the other. He's like, but if you have a conversation with them and they're with it, we'll make it happen. So I gave D a call, and, D was like, what's good? I said, hey, man, do you want Eve? He was like, stop playing, man. Stop playing. I'm like, no, this is a real thing, bro. But you have to answer this question now. He was like, so what's the deal? And I told him. He's like, yeah, I'm in. So I was like, hold on, let me call Jimmy. So I called Jimmy back. And, one thing led to another. He's like, this is perfect. We can do a rollover deal. He called David Cohen, which led his legal team at that time, got him on the phone. And, basically they split profit with Dre. The way the deal happened, didn't have to do new contracts as a rollover deal. We added them to the contract. split the profit, and that was the beginning of that story. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and then it led to, you know, beans and state property, and, you know, and a bunch of like executives like spawned from that energy, you know. So I'm happy for that. I'm happy that, you know, obviously somewhere along the line the right choices were made, because, you know, you look at our blossoming business now and how Philly is positioned, you
Yeah.
know, organically somehow or another. These early phases took part in that, you know, that positioning of, you know, kind of where we are. And I'm not
Mm-hmm.
taking credit at all for like what people are doing, but I feel like it was a segue to kind of, you know, plugging in that power to make it happen for us to get noticed. You know, then I represented Dre Vidal for 10 years, former Touch of Jazz guys, took him and we developed Chris Brown, you know,
Mm-hmm.
Poppin', Excuse Me, Miss. We developed the sound for the Confessions album with Usher. You know, of course, they did Michael Jackson, Butterflies, and a gang of other stuff. It's a really good run. Um, then, you know, ventured off into tech a bit. You know, it was some guys pulling at me. There's a guy by the name of Marc Byers, and he oversaw a company called Elevation Partners, and that was the company that Bono to, you know, for all of this social good that he's doing around the world. This company was a company like raising the money and putting in initiatives together for him. And, you know, they had interest in the music business. So I started taking trips out to the Valley really early, you know. And I remember one day this guy walked me down this block and he's like, look, man, this block right here, there's going to be more transactions happening on this block than anywhere in the world. And it's like, he didn't say it in a cocky fashion.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he said it like, and, you know, one thing led to another, and you look up and the Silicon Valley is really built. And he was right about the level of transactions that was going to take place on that block, as well as the energy, you know, that's taking place as well in that
Yeah.
part of California, you know. And then, you know, as I'm veering my way through tech, I consulted, you know, Philadelphia Tourism, helped them create, you know, with a Philly 360, helped them
Mm-hmm.
pick the ambassadors for the first 5 years. And a lot of that, you know, was the fact that I didn't understand how to get us a star. You know, all of the executives and artists, I didn't understand Philly and how to get us a star. You know, so, you know, what we created was an opportunity for Philly to actually do video bios, which I thought, you know, in hindsight was much better, because the talent could really take that and use it around the world with brands and sponsors and anyone else and develop their own energy, you know. And then, you know, just really peeping, like even Muhammad Ali, you know, he didn't allow, you know, his star to be on the ground because he was named after Muhammad. And I felt as though, you know, we deserve to be in a better place than on the ground. So
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of, you know, one of the reasons why I kind of dealt with that, you know, helped Adele reopen its venue after they were dilapidated for about 5 years or better, you know. And then we're back to, you know, music, you know, as I'm
Mm-hmm.
kind of dealing in, you know, the tech world. And I think it was what was it, South by Southwest. I was down there for the tech side, and, you know, Coach called me, Coach K from Quality Control, and he's like, "Hey, you know, we got to figure out how to get you back to music, man. We need more veterans." You know, so, you know, I took this journey with him for about 6 months, really looking at his business. He came to Philly to visit as well. You know, of course, you saw him at the Roots Picnic and things like that. But that was me kind of rediscovering where the music is presently with the streaming stuff, because, you know, my tenure was stopped at the beginning of streaming, you know. So getting a chance to discover what it was, and I'm like, okay, all this is just energy and a lot of hustle, you know. Of course quality, you know, plays its part, but, you know, essentially it's an algorithmic thing where you just keep piling great things on top of each other, and the audience just decides that they're going to lock into your consistency. So, kind of consulted him in that space for a bit. We talked about a
Mm-hmm.
lot of stuff. I'd already known Grammy that were published by Universal, so, you know, she had been, you know, one of my mentees and friends as well. And we started a discussion the same way. And, you know, she's
Mm-hmm.
like, "Look, we could use some help over here in various different areas. That's how I'm having problems finding the GM." And, you know, then Coach called the same day. I'm like, "Hey, it's funny. I'm having a conversation with E. about the GM stuff and this, that, and the other. I think I'm gonna come and help, help you guys with that. And he was like, look, we need to make it happen. And so he looked up. I ended up in a meeting with them both that led to a meeting with Steve Barnett that led to me coming to LA to take a position as GM. So, I worked there for probably, felt like a lot of the work was done, but, I'm really an IP development person, and inside of it, you don't get a chance to develop IP that you can actually co-own as an employee.
Right.
So, one thing led to another. I think it was a mutual thing for us to kind of move on. And I'm still helping out. I'm executive producing T with Savage's album for Motown still. And
Nice.
whatever they need, I'll always be here to help that out. But, I feel like my strength is being out here where I'm able to be a part of multiple industries to bring it back ultimately to urban culture.
No, I love that. I love that. So let me ask a bigger question. You said you worked with Eve early on in your career, and now executive producing T with Savage's album. Are the sort of the steps or the principles in creating great music, are they the same? What's different about creating an album, let's say late 90s, early 2000s, as compared to now?
Nothing. I mean, I think the
Okay.
reality, and this is what I learned from Gamble, is that you have to go to the person, you have to go to the artist and see where they are, in
Hmm.
life, and you develop the energy of what the music is supposed to be off of their truth.
Mm.
I don't think fundamentally that there's anything different. Sound wise, there could be things that's different, but the nature of how to get to the stories is very much the same.
Got you. And then strategically, just in regards to marketing that album or creating that music, I mean, again, streaming is the prevalent way that everyone listens to music now versus in the past. Do you find that you have to develop new marketing techniques? Do you utilize some of your tech experience to help push, you know what I mean? When we're pushing culture, pushing music forward, do you utilize some of those other aspects of what you learned to really create new techniques in pushing the music out to people?
No, no, absolutely. It's funny, like we're dealing in like the influential marketing space now where people are trying to get influencers to help them market products and this, that, and the other.
Hmm.
And lo and behold, I'm a investor, but also an advisor to a company called Breaker. And essentially, what Breaker did was, they kind of bottlenecked, or all a bunch of influencers. I think we're above 50,000 influencers now around the world, with
Wow.
followers from 500,000 to a million plus, and then some. And then some are lower because they're kind of geo targeted local influencers that might have 50,000. Right? But the good part about it is that it's like a shopping mall, man. You can go in there and shop for what you feel like matches your campaign, the energy, whether it's a skater, somebody getting off a plane on exotic trips, a
Hmm.
basketball player that likes to have certain energy to his moves. And you go in, you pay, there's an agreement that's already in there. The influencer lets you know what they do, and you kind
Hmm.
of you pay them accordingly, direct. And now you've got the culture and community marketing your product, because I feel like that's what we need to go back to, is
Yeah.
making sure the communities are involved with the product that we're putting out. So tech plays a great role in everything that happens.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. So, I mean, I want to go into sort of using this as a learning tool, this entire conversation, each conversation every week on Meet the Execs. You stated you were a GM with Quality Control Music. One, just break
It was
down to
Motown,
people.
actually.
Oh, it was
It
Motown.
wasn't for
It was Motown.
QC. With QC, we distributed QC, so QC stuff
Got it.
fell inside of our business unit, but I was the GM for Motown and not QC.
So, GM for Motown. What does it mean to be a GM for Motown? Like, what went into a day to day of being a GM for really one of the most historic labels in the world?
It starts off with, really learning the brand, and to make sure that, we're operating in a fashion that, the brand exists and what the world believes the company to be.
Hmm.
Two is really discovering the people that works for me, understanding not only who they are, but what they want to be. So they feel like they have someone in leadership that can help them chart that course, without selfishness,
Hmm.
and also learning what works and what doesn't, And, unfortunately, that's the hire and firing. So having to let some folks go to bring other people on to help us have a more oiled machine, which isn't always the prettiest job, but it kind of
Hmm.
comes with the territory. So that's pretty much it. And making sure that we're staying within budget. So having to have those conversations with, whether it's Neo's manager or someone else to say, hey, I think maybe, and being honest with them, like, look, we're leaving out of this year pretty strong.
Hmm.
That, going into the next year is probably best for you to operate. We're already in November. Let's move the project to the top of the year. Those type of conversations, but being honest with the people that you're working with, so they understand that we're working as a team, to push things through.
No, for sure. For sure. I know in your career you have been a manager and you've worked on the label side at the same time. How difficult was it, is it to juggle, multiple roles in an industry that is, we both know that is nonstop. You could get calls at 3 a.m., and they won't stop until the next day. So, I mean, how difficult is it to balance multiple roles in this industry?
Man, it was difficult until I grew up and learned how to delegate versus trying to do
Mm.
everything myself. Wondering if someone was going to come to the table talented enough to live it through or have the passion to live it through. But man, you can't do it alone. So you've got to have a good team. And I've been fortunate enough to have, with everything that I've done, to have good teams to,
Yeah.
execute certain things. So I'm not like this octopus trying to do it all and
Hmm.
ultimately screwing up the company or screwing up whatever we're trying to do.
Yeah, that's a lesson I still have to learn a little bit. But let me ask you a question in regards to, let's take Eve for example. Nurturing an artist from when they were first starting out to watching them become multi-platinum, Grammy award winning artists. What is that transition as a manager? Like, how do you navigate? Because I'm sure an artist, their personality, their behaviors will probably change once they reach a certain level of success.
Right.
So, for the future managers that are listening into this, what's that process like? How do you navigate an artist from, starting out in their garage or performing at open mics to becoming global superstars?
I mean, I think it's just keeping it a buck with them, man. It's like you're not always going to make people happy. They're not always
Mm.
going to make you happy. But really being honest and stern with the things that are necessary, and also leaving room for mistakes. you know, Not being that gorilla that when a mistake happens, I'm the guy that's coming in arguing all the time and stuff like that. It's like it
Hmm.
doesn't work. I feel like a conversation and an explanation in regards to what's taking place and where it's going, and why we're doing things this way at this point. But
Yeah.
also getting the artist to understand that in the beginning, you're neck and neck with the artist. You're traveling with them. You're everywhere because you're building this business. But once that business gets to a point where it has a value to the general public, it has a value
Yeah.
to corporate America and things like that, you kind of got to pull back a little bit and get
Hmm.
other people in there so you can actually continue, the dream of what it was that you started building from the beginning.
Yeah.
And that sometimes becomes difficult for artists because it gets a little separation anxiety and things.
Mm.
Some of the most difficult things is the artist feeling like you're pulling back or you're not there or this, that, and the other. And it's not that. It's not the case. It's the fact that who's going to go out and build the business if I'm with you every day?
Right.
I've got to teach you the business going in. So we got to be there neck and neck in the beginning to make sure that I protect you from mistakes that could cost you your career, and things like that. But once we get there, and I feel like you have that foundational understanding, at that point, we've got to really build a business. So I've got to
Hmm.
be in those meetings and I've got to do discovery work to make sure that we're creating these opportunities. So,
Yeah.
look, we were very fortunate. I feel like template that a lot of the girls are going on today, at least the top tier girls, I feel like we built that model with Eve.
Mm.
Starting off with music, television, film, beauty, fashion, all of those verticals, we were locked in before we even put out the second album. So when you look at the model that Beyonce is doing, and I feel
Hmm.
like Rihanna's taking it to another level. But I feel like we were that gem that showed that black artists, especially in rap, could do it. So I feel good about that.
No, that's amazing. And speaking of that template, did you find it difficult to really branch out into those other sectors with Eve? Eve is, you know what I mean? She is a black woman, rapping and spitting some real stuff. And I'm just, going into beauty, going into film. Was that difficult? Like trying to sell her? Like what was that process like expanding her portfolio outside of the music
It's
space?
funny. We had a great team. I mean, that really understood the vision. And look, we had some things around variables around us that we had to figure out what's our unique proposition, right? So
Hmm.
when you look at, Lauren Hill was there, Foxy and Kim were there, Missy was there. Eve was a little taller, and then she had, even though she was fair skinned, she had bone structure like the African models and things like that. So I was fortunate. Chris Chambers was running PR at that time at Interscope, and we sat down and we talked about the vision. And he started pulling friends that he knew from the fashion world. This guy Kite Brewster that came up with all of the looks, and he was already the stylist for Iman, Donatella Versace. He's a fashion editor, stuff like that. And he even got ridiculed by working with her in the beginning until we showed the world what we meant. And then all of a sudden it was like, now we're getting calls for the first person on the female rapper on the cover of Harper's Bazaar, things like that. We're being invited to Fashion Week. We're having dinner with Iman about potential makeup brands and things like that. But we went with the intent of being unique to what we had, but also being authentic against everything else that was happening. This was an
Hmm.
authentic route. Her mother kind of worked in the Philadelphia fashion world a bit, so there was synergy with that we just had to like bring to light, and bring it to the
Yeah,
world. So, we're fortunate we had the right team and nobody was scared. Everybody believed the vision.
no, for sure. Talk to us about that team. You keep talking about the team. You had a strong team. You mentioned Chris Chambers, who's one of the top PR publicists in the music industry. Just what is that team around an artist that helps that artist continue to grow and prosper throughout their careers? Just some of those key titles and roles that you can mention to some of the listeners now.
Yeah, I mean, looking at Kite, I'm always into, are the people on your team, can they make the call?
Hmm.
Not just be there, but can they make the call? So from a PR standpoint, Chris Chambers could make the call. From
Right.
a fashion standpoint, Kite could make the call. There was another brother by the name of Justin that did makeup. I think Justin was like one of the top makeup artists for CoverGirl at that point. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? And he could make the call. So we were in a position that not only were we getting advanced product, before it came out, once we got maybe 6 months in, we're getting stuff from Gucci and all these other places before they're hitting the stores, before
Mm.
they're hitting the runways. And I feel like having a team together that could actually make the calls, inside of the vision, was very important. We're early on, my thought of a team was people that I was comfortable with, my friends
Mm.
or this, that, and the other, understanding that that wasn't it because it was always dependent on me to make the call. So I looked up and I was like that octopus that was doing everything, but I supposedly had a team, so I had to mature into, understanding what it was by looking at other people that were successful and what was around them and what made it work better, you know?
Yeah, no, for sure. Great point. I'm going to switch gears for a minute. You are the strategic advisor for AMP Global Technologies. What does it mean to be a strategic advisor for a tech company, and what is AMP Global Technologies?
Yeah. And global technology is part tech, part, film and TV. Right. So,
Okay.
on the tech side, there's a product that's built called Take Back the Mic. And what Take Back the Mic is like Anthony Bourdain meets a. So, what they were able to build was a product that is the first product of its kind to come directly out of the diaspora, which, you know, now having this relationship with Africa in different areas is very important that products are built from Africa out and not from other places in, right?
Mm.
So now this product is a two-time Emmy nominated, but also won the Telly Awards. So
Wow.
inside of that, the Telly Awards means that they beat Netflix, they'd be Disney, all of this little machine that could, but it's wrapped around, it's strapped up with a great team. There's a brother by the name of Derek Eshang that, grew up in United States, Ghana, a little bit of Saudi,
Hmm.
various different areas around the world. He's a Harvard grad as well. He worked in media,
Okay.
not only on the artistic side as well. So he got a chance to kind of look and see that something else could be built. So
Yeah.
essentially what Amp Global is like one part tech, the other part like, Black Disney of the global South.
I love that. So, why was it important for you? Because a lot of individuals in music, I've seen some venture off into the tech space. Why was it important for you to work with someone and really building inward to the continent to Africa?
Upon working with Tiwa on their last album,
Okay.
and I'm an advisor to Burna Boy and his family as well. And inside of it, really learning from their position what's important. What's
Mm-hmm.
important for the diaspora, what's important for who's holding the product, who's building it, where they're building it from, all of those things, but also understanding what are the ills on the ground and being able to go there, multiple times before COVID. It gave me a chance to really see from a societal standpoint what's happening, and the passion kicked in to, this getting there, and
Hmm.
you get off of the plane and someone says welcome home. I don't even get that here, you know. So it just something different kicked in, man, and it's just when you see all of your people, from doing well to suffering, and
Yeah.
it's like you can't help but step in and help, if you have the resources that to do so. So that's kind of what took place.
Got you. Got you. So, do you find yourself now focused more on tech than music and entertainment, or are you, splitting time between the two? Or, in my opinion, music and entertainment and tech, there's such a convergence now. Is
Yeah,
this been a way for you to do both, equally as much? You know what I mean?
yeah.
Because you're a part of that?
It's all in.
Yeah.
They belong together. It's a marriage,
Yeah.
and music is the energy, that builds tech. In a lot of cases, you look at, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, all of these things. The most progressive things that have taken place was because music was behind it.
Yep.
That ultimately grew their audience. So we can't discount the value of music. It's just that you got to find different ways to quantify its value. So,
Yeah.
I'm looking at tech and music always going together. I don't think
Hmm.
that entertainment, tech in the world at this point goes hand in hand. So you can't leave it out of any discussion, but you also
Right.
can't let it hang out there by itself without this discussion of like human behavior and energy that it takes to make it work.
No, absolutely. So with Windows and Intel, you have more ways to work your way so you can do whatever it is that you're inspired to do. So Mr. Byers, let me ask you, Windows and Intel wants to know, where does your inspiration come from?
Man, it comes from my family, bro, to be honest.
Mm,
It comes from black people, understanding that, the will is to be great, and you've got to do a lot of work to accomplish that. So I feel like that's where it all comes from, man. I just want my people in multiple ways to be proud of me and proud of what I've been able to do, not only for myself, but for them, and I feel like that's,
yeah,
that's my answer.
no, for sure, for sure. We've heard from Mark. Now we want to hear from you. Cast your vote in the poll. We want to know, where does your inspiration strike? Windows and Intel wants to know. Make sure you put it in the poll right now. And Mark, when you talked about your inspiration, you talked about family. One of the things I always ask executives, because it's something that I try to balance on my end. As you know, I have a 7-year-old son. How do you find time? One, I want to change. I was going to say work-life balance, but in my opinion, that's already putting work ahead of life. So, how do
Hmm.
you really manage your life balance? Like making sure you spend time with your family while helping to build up, be an advisor to amazing tech companies, helping continue to help music companies or executive produce albums as a part of Motown and T. Savage. Like, how do you balance all of that, but make sure that you have time for yourself and for the people closest to you?
It's funny, man. I make it a point to that after a certain time, I'm actually not working.
Mm.
I realized that we can control that. And the one thing about the music business is, at least on the urban side, it feels like it's always on, right? Because that
Yeah.
responsibility to help our people. But the reality of it is that it doesn't have to be always on, and I've learned that through time, that if you efficiently apply the right energy to whatever it is that you're doing, you don't have to do it all night,
Mm.
but also be specific. You have to really understand, the why. Why am I
Mm.
doing this? Why do I have to stay up late? Why do I have to do this? I realize I don't have to do any of those things. I can
Yeah.
actually control the destiny of what takes place because of the need for my involvement, and I have to have discipline to make sure that everything has its place. So most of the time, by 6 o'clock, sometimes earlier, I'm available based on the model that I created, because all
Mm-hmm.
my foreign calls start at 5 a.m. And then,
Mm-hmm.
I don't really have anything musically, so to speak, that I'm doing in the States. So with that being the case, most of that stuff I'm done by 3 o'clock, because on the other side of the world, it's late.
Yeah.
Works for me. So I'm gonna stay kind of within this model. And if
Mm-hmm.
something falls into the States, even as an executive for a project, I'm not going to work all night. I'm not going to be in the studio all night. I can help that artist without having to do that to my life,
Mm.
and to my family's life. I need to be available, for anybody in my family, be able to call me for whatever. So, that's first above anything.
Yeah. I think I need to heed some of your advice, sir. Um,
Yeah.
I have a
Time
separate
management.
question. It is about time management. It has to be. It has
Yeah.
to be. You drive yourself crazy sometimes.
Yeah.
For real. Let me ask you. This is a personal question. This one's a selfish question. Why is it? Why does it feel like it's more difficult to work together or work cohesively in a city like Philadelphia than it is in other regions, whether it's, domestically, whether it's internationally? Everyone talks about Atlanta, right? And even I'm seeing regions and pockets on the continent in Africa where people are working together, engaging together to create music, to develop technology, just to develop just cohesiveness. Why do you think it's
Yeah.
difficult? And I wanted to speak to you because you're a Philly native as well. Why is
Yeah.
Philadelphia feel so different?
Well, it's funny, like Philly, the one thing I realized about Philly from traveling is that Philly is the only place that doesn't understand the value of its arts, especially in the black sector.
Mm.
So, you look at whether it's the visual arts that we see that's moving from, the Al Basir, Hollies, that the stuff that he's
Yeah.
doing. This guy is a former Philly's most wanted guy, but where's the space, along the parkway in these galleries and do they even know he exists, right? When
Right.
you look at, my frustration with what was happening on the Star Walk, there was somebody that had their hands on those assets that didn't come from the business. And ironically, when I made the call, I'm like, yo, what is it what is it that it takes for a person to have this position, to get a
Mm.
star? And they was like, people call in. I was like, but what is the onus on you guys' behalf to know who's done what?
Yeah.
And the person sarcastically said, well, what have you done? And I
Mm.
told him what I've done. And, the person literally asked me, well, does Troy Carter know this and this, that, and the other? I'm like, we all started in the same bunker. Yes,
Mm.
they do. The question is, you should know it in this position. You know
Right.
what I mean? But also, you look at, we've got Comcast in Philly, right?
Mm-hmm.
They own Music Choice, all of these other things, and they haven't made a decision to make some level of incubator for Philadelphia specifically, to Philadelphia art specifically, to take advantage of the tools that they have. How can we
Yeah.
shop shows to them since they own NBC? How do we get music placed in Music Choice? Do we have a specific Philadelphia playlist? Standpoint, they're not giving the people on the ground nothing to look at to have that.
Mm.
Where Atlanta, they had, TNT, the network was focused, the mayor was focused, the city was focused,
Yeah.
so inside of that, they understood how to drive the energy around the arts, but accept it as a viable partner. Where a
Sure.
lot of times we have to leave, or have most of our business really outside of the artists that we represent. The business is taking place outside of Philly, which when you think of it from an efficiency standpoint, we got to go out to get all our distribution, all of our capital, stuff
Yep.
like this, but stay inside of Philly and pay their taxes for what they're not helping us do. So, I feel like we all could come together from a leadership standpoint and make our own demands on what needs to take place. You know, I participated in getting a music accelerator program together for Motown in Detroit.
Oh, wow.
And we're bringing that accelerator to Philly. It's not going to be a Motown accelerator, but I partnered with the company Generator, which I'm now on their board, and we're bringing
Hmm.
that to Philly. And what happens is we give them the resources. We make sure people like you and Sean and Troy and myself and anybody else in the industry is able to, give some advice to these kids. We give them budget and resources that it takes to take their project to the next level. And
Hmm.
ironically, we had some great successes out of Philly. It's viral successes. I mean, out of Detroit, the Board in the House record, that kid came out of our accelerator, a
Oh,
few other
wow.
things, but it put us in position to be, Fast Company's 100 most innovative companies, which
Hmm.
gave us an edge by using, the tech thing and everything else to like create
Hmm.
another conversation for us to be a part of as a brand. So we're gonna bring that to Philly, and I want to make sure that everybody in Philly, from Detroit Carters, the Jay Irvins, the Ryan Press, the Brandon Pankeys, the Sean G's, just everybody that we know can bring legitimate resources to it, helps
Yep.
out the product that can actually help out the curation of what needs to take place in our town. I feel like we can help, push the envelope of the quality from us understanding from high level what it takes to be a global artist. I feel like we can utilize that budget, that energy, our bandwidth to, help make some changes there ourselves.
Yeah, that's all that. And of course, I'm gonna be all in on that, Mark. Just explain what an accelerator is. You went in depth, but again, a lot of our listeners may not even know what that is or what that even means. Um, you know, if they're going to get into the tech space or if they need help themselves in a particular area.
Yeah. I mean, essentially, just to make it simple, you're
Mhm.
kind of creating a gathering spot with resources for, people in certain industries or certain skills to develop their dream out to get it to the market. So essentially for me, that's what the accelerator was for what we're doing in music. We're pulling in resources and we say, okay, this is the hub that you come to every day, but these
Hmm.
are all the resources in this hub to develop ultimately the idea of what you're trying to be, and we help take it to market.
Got it. Got it. So I'm going to ask you the same question, but for two different paths. What would your advice be for a young artist that wants to make it or thrive in the music industry? And vice versa, what would your advice be for a young executive that wants to make it through the ranks and thrive in the music industry?
I think bypass the idea of fame only. I think relationships are key. I feel like, what folks have to understand is that this is a community or neighborhood that existed far beyond, you entering it. So when you come in,
Hmm.
as soon as you walk in the door, everybody's looking, and they're watching your behaviors. And,
Yeah.
if you're coming in, you're partying too much. If you come in, you're rude. You come in with too many people, things like that. You're getting chinks in your armor. So once you end up having a meeting with someone, they're like, I saw this person at this thing, and they were kind of, I don't know if I want to do business with this person. So I feel like
Hmm.
developing those disciplines very early, but also understanding the value in humans and not just the
Yeah.
fame that they come with. Because I'm not the most famous person, but I know I can help people with a lot. And,
Yep.
I've watched folks, not acknowledge and just do rude things in the room. And you just look, and you're just like, wow. Then you blink and they're in the meeting with you and they're like, hey, that's not really me, this, that, and the other. I'm just like, don't put yourself in a position to have to explain the bad parts. Get rid of those
Yeah.
bad parts and focus on the good parts so people can, have that wherewithal to want to help you,
Yeah.
because they see the passion that you have and the good human that you are. I think that's what's going
Hmm.
to get you by, because there's a lot of people that aren't as talented as some people with bad attitudes, and they're making it.
Yep.
You
Yep.
know, so I think that's it from both the executive and the artist side. It's the development of relationships and the understanding how to do so is it. And it takes a lot of humility for you to
Hmm.
speak to people in a respectable fashion, because you never know who is going to be that person to turn that key for you and open the door.
You never know. That's a message to everyone that's viewing right now, listening in. Marc, what do you want your legacy to be in this industry, in music, in tech, in life? What do you want that lasting Marc Byers legacy to be?
Man, I want it to be where, people look up and they say, man, this man fought for us,
Mm,
period. Like, whatever it may be, I want that to be the case. Whether it's my family, whether it's people that don't know me, that the work that's put in, I want it to be a case where they like, man, this dude, he fought for us. He took,
yeah.
all the necessary steps to make sure that he walked through doors where he was totally ignorant to and learned
Yeah.
how to get there. I'm a high school graduate, man, so I didn't have the colleges and other things that other folks had, because I
Mm,
was already like, you know, I found a way early on. I was shoveling snow, cutting grass, everything under the sun, and I had gotten used to capital, before I understood what capital was. So when it was time for
hmm.
like college and things like that, I was like, whoa, you got to be broke to do that. You gotta you can't eat. And I looked at my family and I was like, my father did well, but he didn't do well enough to cover that bill. And then I wasn't knowledgeable enough to understand the debt. But when I looked at it, I was like, yo, you got paid. Like, nah, I'm cool. I'm gonna work it out. So I
Hmm.
worked a bunch of odd jobs until I figured out what my talent was. And once
Yeah.
I figured out what my talent was, I put it to work, and I just decided that I'm going to make sure that I keep quality in my hand and I outwork the next person. And
Yeah.
ultimately that's how I got where I am now. It's just I stay humble. Some of the people that have progressed me in life was that so-called invisible person in the room that
Yeah.
recognized my behavior and pulled me to the side. It's the same way, meeting Clarence Avon, same way. Like, I got invited to a dinner. He was there. Everybody's talking. When I said my piece, he was like, hey, you come here and sit next to me. And he gave me all
Mm,
his numbers. He said, you call me tomorrow. And we've had like this friendship, this kind of like grandfather son, because I don't remember any of my grandfathers since probably I was 5 or 6, because
mm.
they didn't exist past that. And then ironically, when we met, my father went down with cancer, with a heart attack and a stroke. He survived,
Okay.
but he's no longer like speaking and things like that. He's not moving around jovial like he could, so he's
Right.
pretty much confined to a bed. So I think what most men fail to realize, that you got to have a relationship with men. You
Yep.
know, they're going to understand your journey because they've gone through it. And I've been fortunate that, my father was never selfish. He always allowed us to have relationship with strong men. He took us to strong men, and he always made sure that if we attached to weak men, that, you know what I mean? So, you know, it's that, and I've got to be humble to
Hmm.
that. I like the fact that I could, visit Philly and look at my father, and I could see in his eyes that he's proud of his son.
Yeah. Now you almost got me, Marc. I almost teared up on here just thinking about my grandfather who passed last year. Really, to that point, what you were talking about, super strong foundation for me. Paid for my schools early on. Gave me money to go to New York 3 times a week for my first internship, just because he believed in what I was doing and what I would do in this
Yeah,
industry. So I totally get that. Three
yeah.
million percent, 3 million
And
percent.
people
Yeah,
don't know your journey. When you don't
yeah,
talk about that stuff and you use it as your crutch. You watch
yeah.
people with all of these demands of what they want, but never and ask, yeah, are you good today? What's this? What's that? And you just
Right.
look, you're like, oh, you selfish joker. Meanwhile, they're laying all of their problems on you about what
All
they're
the time.
going through and this, that, and the other. And you're like, after you finish that, are you going to wonder, am I okay? You know?
Right.
Yeah, man. Life is deep.
It's amazing. It's one of them things. It's one of those things. So anything you can leave us with, anything coming up that you want to talk about? I know you said you're executive producing Team of Savage's album. Just anything you want to leave us with before we get out of here.
Man, I just want to leave everybody, man. It's just, man, be kind, work hard, focus on quality and consistency. If I don't want it to be, my last words to be self-serving. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I want to make sure that these words are actually something that people can run with, no matter who you are, where you are in life, that you can apply these principles and better yourself
Yeah.
and better things for your family.
There it is, man. Marc, I am sincerely appreciative of you being on the show today, making time. It's an amazing Friday. It's also your birthday today. Happy birthday.
My birthday's actually, yeah, it's I reached another one. Thank you very
Yeah.
much. God is good.
All the time, all the time,
Yeah,
all the time.
yeah,
My bad. I
man.
didn't mean to shout it out in front of everybody, without them
No, it's
knowing.
okay, man. I'm not. Look, man. I feel it's a blessing when you can make it to another one. So I'm not.
Yes.
I'm not hiding nothing, man. I take it. I would. I wouldn't even be here to be upset if I didn't make it to another one.
Yep.
So
There it
I
is.
take it with a smile. Everyone that comes, I'm not focused on age as much as greatness.
Mm. There it is. That's how we end it. Marc
Yep.
Byers, super executive, music, entertainment, technology, and whatever else he wants to get into will be a success. Marc, I appreciate you being here with us today on Meet the Execs. Thank you so much.
No. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Another incredible interview. I hope everyone really learned. I want to thank Windows and Intel for powering us, giving us more features so that we can get more done. And I hope you learned a lot today. I've been your host, Brandon Pankey. It's been another amazing day. We'll see you next Friday. Everyone have a great weekend and tune in to BlackStream Live exclusively on Twitch. Take care.